In the last 24 hours, Scotland's chances of qualification to the knockouts have been severely reduced, with the likelihood of another group stage exit now on the horizon. It isn't the outcome anyone wanted, but in today's episode we'll be running through how we got there. Hello and welcome back to the Scotsman World Cup podcast as the reality of Scotland's potential World Cup exit begins to dawn on us. In today's episode, I'm delighted to be joined again by Lewis Anderson of the Scotsman in Glasgow World. Lewis, I don't know whether your mood's improved much, I imagine not, but I'll ask anyway, how are you doing?
I kind of feel like maybe I was a wee bit emotional on yesterday's podcast. Obviously results haven't gone in our favour overnight, particularly some of the games that we were hoping that might have swung in our favour. Obviously Ecuador beating Germany was a bit of a hurt blow, not a surprise if truth be told, and Australia and Paraguay obviously played out a goalless draw there, so not what we were hoping for. I think that's our chances now reduced below 5%, I believe, for qualification now, where it was up at around 42% I think yesterday afternoon before the games were played. So yeah, it's a precarious position we find ourselves in now. We're in that final 8th spot, aren't we, of the 12 teams in third place. So we still need a few scenarios for things to go in our favour, but it's looking increasingly likely at this stage that we will be heading home.
I'm also delighted to be rejoined by our chief football writer, Alan Petula, over in the United States. Alan, I always get this wrong because you've been jet setting. Where are you at the moment? I know it's America.
In America, yep. And we're back in Charlotte, Graham, back in Charlotte, which has been a beautiful venue for the most part last couple of weeks. Weather's been fantastic. Woke up this morning, lashing with rain, grey skies, very, very bleak scene outside. I can maybe turn the phone around and show you in a little while, but yeah, it's a very bleak setting this morning. I'm just wondering what it'd be like at the Scotland training camp down the road, whether they're going to be, what are the players doing today? Do they have a light training session? We'll be endeavouring to find out later. As Lewis said, is there any point, given its chances are now reduced to below 5%, these players out there training? But I guess they will do something just to keep ticking over. But what a scenario! 2 weeks ago, Graham, when we were on these shows and we were so full of expectation and joy and very upbeat, and to think we've come here so quickly, it just seems to have escalated so quickly that suddenly Scotland are really about to head out through the exit door. It's just it's frightening, really, and a very kind of a downbeat. It's a very downbeat Scotland party in Charlotte today.
I want to stick with you, Alan, because you were obviously at the game over against Brazil in Miami the other night. It felt like a damaging result at the time, but there was still, like, as Lewis said, like a 42% chance. Like, I'm no mathematician, but it sounds a little bit better than below 4%. And that sort of happened in a little over a 24-hour period, if that. Wins for South Africa, Ecuador, various others. I think it's 4.2 or something like that. Obviously, you haven't been for a pint with Steve Clarke since, but how are things feeling in the Scotland camp, not just with the team and the feeling around the team, but also with the writers who have gone over there? Because you're all Scotland fans. You all want to see Scotland do well, and it's happened again, unfortunately. Yeah,
well, I mean, I was in Miami yesterday. Obviously, woke up in Miami. Yeah, you're right, Graham. You forget where you are. It's such a sort of a fast-moving trip. This, which city have you woken up in? Miami yesterday morning. It was. I had to do a couple of things, write a few things, get myself to the airport, get on the flight to Charlotte. By the time I'd landed in Charlotte, which is about a 2.5-hour flight, 2-hour flight from Miami, my phone, I've turned on my phone, and of course, Ecuador had scored their late winner against Germany, and that pretty much put the tin lid on things, didn't it? So yeah, in the space of a few hours, I went from being, slightly optimistic, hanging on to this thread of hope that Scotland might still, squeeze through, to landing in Charlotte last night, and just thinking, well, that it's not looking good, and nothing that's happened since has given us any reason to think otherwise. So yeah, it's a as I said before, it feels very bleak. What was interesting, I thought, Graham and Lewis, know what your thoughts, but I mean, in the press conference straight after the game against Brazil, we're all still trying to evaluate what that defeat meant. 3-0, it was, we knew it wasn't good, but you kind of thought you might still have a reasonable chance. But then to go into the press conference, 20 minutes, 25 minutes afterwards, after the game finished, Carlo Ancelotti had already been in. Steve Clarke was the second manager, and he came in and just absolutely whatever hope we had, he extinguished it pretty quickly, because he said, "That's it, we're home," basically. That was the message, and I thought, yeah, wow, he's been proved correct, I think, obviously, but I thought it was still quite eye-opening that he came out. He was so sure that Scotland had already, their goose was already cooked, so to speak. So yeah, he's been proved right. I think SFA must have had their boffins, their kind of data boffins on it, and I think they probably had already concluded that a -3 goal difference wasn't going to be enough. So and 3 points. So and that's the way it's turned out. But yeah, if Scotland somehow had managed to squeeze through, it would have been fascinating to see how Steve Clarke would have picked his players up again, having been so downbeat in the aftermath of the Brazil game.
I was going to ask what the feeling was like with that, because I was watching it at home. Like, it was 1:30, I think, by the time Steve Clarke came out. Really, really short interview with Ailey Barber, I think it was, and a disappointing one, if I'm honest, because I think, forget the media perspective, the fans will want to hear things, and I think they've been amazing, and they've been all over social media across the world. They probably deserved that. But then Andy Robertson came out and said, I feel like that's it. Then McGinn agreed with it as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I know hope can be a bit imprisoning at times, and he has been proven to be right. They've all been proven to be right. But I imagine, if I speak to you as a fan, Alan, that's maybe the last thing you want to hear. You want to hear a little bit of hope, a little bit of semblance of hope, or something to take forward.
Yeah. No, definitely. I think if you're a Tartan Army fan, you're already, you're used to sort of taking these dents and knocks at these major tournaments, and they've been so full of hope, and to hear those words possibly, and while you're still walking away from the stadium, possibly, and that's very possible, because it was a hell of a place to get out of the Miami Stadium, and like most stadiums in America, far away from Miami. So it's a job and a half to get there and get back again. So I just think of these Tartan Army foot soldiers traipsing back to their bars, etc., restaurants after the game, and hearing this message. I think it must have been particularly hard, hard on them, I think. So, but you're right. He's been, they've been proved correct, and here we are. And I guess that goal, you think of the Cunha, the third goal against Brazil. That's going to be the one that could kill us, I think. But we can sit here forever and look back at the 3 games and say where we went wrong. Haiti, not posting a more handsome victory against Haiti is killing us, as well as some of us suspected might be the case immediately after that game. So yeah, the post-mortems will come. We all know there'll be pages and pages of it in the next few days, and already online, and radio shows, TV shows. It's being debated to the nth degree. But yeah, you're right, Graham, to bring up the interview. I think Steve Clarke's getting a lot of criticism for that, isn't he? The 2 sort of immediately post-match interviews he's done against was it Morocco and against Brazil. He's been pretty. I mean, you've raw emotions. I empathise. He's hurting. My goodness, he's hurting. But I think he would probably reflect and think, wishes he'd handled those interviews a bit better, and perhaps just given a bit more of his time to the interviewers.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you for what it's worth, 100%. Lewis, I think a lot's going to be said in the aftermath of this, and a lot has already been said in the aftermath of the game against Brazil and also Haiti, because I think a lot of people are now reflecting back on that Haiti game and going, actually, was that our worst performance? But look, I'm a football fan, and I think last night I was sat in the house with a really, really disappointed wife-to-be who was getting very frustrated at Ecuador's performance because it affected Scotland directly, whereas I had the opinion that Ecuador performed really well. They fought, they battled, and it's hard to not enjoy that as a football fan. And I said, look, I'm enjoying this as much as it's disappointing for Scotland. And she was basically wanting to throw a cup of coffee through the window. So I kind of saw both sides of it. But I think a lot of people were left wondering after that Ecuador game, not just being disappointed at the fact that the Ecuador game kind of puts the nail in the coffin. It's the fact that Ecuador fought so hard, and I don't think that the Scotland players didn't put effort in. I actually would completely disagree with that. I think the Scotland players did, but there didn't seem to be a semblance of plan of how to get a result against Morocco and how to get a result against Brazil. It never really looked likely, and you see Ghana get a result against England with good disciplined performance defensively, and you see Ecuador get a win against a really decent Germany team who've looked pretty tasty in the first couple of games, although I know Germany had nothing to play for, but it's still Germany. Does that make it more frustrating that you see these teams that are perceived as lesser nations, which I don't think is fair, to be honest, but they're perceived as that, or at least teams that, you know, you feel Scotland should be competing with, are producing these performances and results, whereas Scotland were just told, or it felt like Scotland were like, well, it's Morocco and Brazil, there's nothing you can do, when clearly the kind of is.
Yeah, I felt that result last night was the perfect example of what not to do when you go behind so early on. I mean, we look at the game against Morocco and Brazil. We've conceded goals in the first 10 minutes. Ecuador go 1-0 down after just 2 minutes in that game, and you know they didn't hit the panic button, did they? It was a case of regrouping. And you know, in the end up more than merited their victory, and the scenes of celebration was actually quite nice to watch, I must say. So well played to them. I thought they thoroughly deserved that victory. Yeah, I mean, it is slightly frustrating. At the end of the day, every team that's at this World Cup deserves to be there. They've earned the right to be there. I think from a Scotland perspective, you know, Alan mentioned that the post-mortem will be carried out. We're getting well used to conducting these, but it's the same old story, isn't it? Scotland, we know there isn't a wealth of goals in this team. We don't have a star striker. We haven't had a striker since, you know, back in the 80s, 90s. It's been a long time since we've produced someone that's going to score you regular goals at major tournaments, and we're just not good enough defensively either, in my opinion, to be really wanted to make a mark deep into a tournament like this, and that's a huge frustration. I was a wee bit surprised by some of the players' reaction. I must admit, I could understand to a degree why Steve Clarke was so kind of blunt in his answers post-match, but for some of the players, we made a lot of this in the build-up to the tournament. For likes Andy Robertson, Kenny McLean, this was their last chance. This was the last opportunity at a major tournament. Realistically, you know, you might say a few of them still be hanging around, potentially John McGinn and so on for the upcoming Euros in 2 years' time. We're a host nation, but for a lot of the team here, this was the last opportunity to really make a real go of things. You know, I think the pain of the last two European Championships will have been in the back of their minds, and it was sickening, really. It was sickening, really, when that third goal went in. It was just a sinking feeling you had in your heart in that moment of time. And, you know, as you said, the results in the last couple of days haven't gone our way either. So, yeah, it's tough. It's really tough. I was born in 1997. I was 13 months old when we were at last at France 98. It's great to see Scotland competing back at a major tournament, but geez, after the last couple of European Championships, I kind of really felt with this group of players that we were going to do something special this time around. So it's a real kind of feeling of deflation.
A real quick one, Lewis, before we go into maybe what we do for the future moving forward. Look, there's still a chance at times speaking that these things could happen, and let's hope there's all egg on our face, isn't it? And it does work out, and Scotland randomly get a last 32. It just feels so sobering, and I think that's the only word I can really use. It's been an experience that people probably hoped wasn't going to be the case, and sort of felt like it wasn't going to be. But when I'm looking back over those three games, there's one. It's a numerous questions that I'm asking, but it all comes down to one thing. I look at the team that he's played and the changes he's made, and there's part of me that thinks, does Steve Clarke know what his best starting 11 is. There's a lot of conversation about, has this group of players with Steve Clarke reached its end? But then I look through the team. Shanklin plays the first game and the third game, doesn't get on the pitch in the second game. Hanley's like a trusted lieutenant, plays the first 2 games. I know Scott McKenna's injured, but then comes out for the third game. For the rights and wrongs of who you think should and shouldn't play, and everyone will have their own opinion. There's part of me that feels like Clarke didn't know what his best 11 was going into this tournament either, and that hasn't helped, has it?
No, I agree with that. I thought he made some strange decisions along the way. I must admit, I think there was a kind of clamour, wasn't there, on the back of the Haiti game that we perhaps needed a totally different opposition, but particularly against Brazil, you were thinking it was going to be more of a kind of physical presence, a Lyndon Dykes type of striker up front, but Dykes was barely used across all 3 games. Grant Hanley as well, big decision to drop him on the back of his glaring mistake against Morocco, which he obviously took a lot of criticism for, but he's brought in Scott McKenna, and he's made a disastrous error early in the game. So yeah, there was a few decisions. I think the one player that will certainly come away with this with his head held high is Lewis Ferguson. He's been Scotland's talismanic figure across these 3 games. He's been the one player, the real standout, in each of all 3 games. So he certainly hasn't. Given it's taken him a bit of time to find his feet as a kind of senior international, he's really starting to prove exactly why the team should almost be built around him, I think, going forward in the years to come. But yeah, some of the decision makings I didn't agree with. I also didn't agree with some of the substitutions. I do feel, he mentioned pre-tournament about how it was going to be very much a case of utilising the full squad, but I think there's 4 or 5 players there that haven't even seen a minute of football during this tournament. And occasionally on games, for my opinion, it was too similar to the Euros in terms of making changes too late in games. We're down in that 3-0 trailing against Brazil, and he brings on 2 attack-minded players, Finlay Curtis and Shea Adams, in injury time. For me, they need to be on the pitch 15-20 minutes sooner, because we're chasing the game. We need to try and find a way back into the match. So yeah, frustrating.
A penny for the thoughts of Lennon Miller, I think, as well. But that's a different podcast for a different day, I guess. But Alan, I'm going to leave the final word with you, because you've experienced this all at the games. It's quite clear that something needs to change for Scotland to go where they want to go, which is, let's be honest, get into the knockout stages. I think if you got the knockout stages fairly and squarely, and you got out of this group, people would be happy with that. And that might seem defeatist, but let's be honest, I don't think Scotland are in the place to win the World Cup. So getting where they've never been before would have been exactly what people wanted and what the fans would have been delighted with. It doesn't look like that's going to happen. There's a 4% chance it will. Let's assume it won't. What do you think Scotland need to change? Because they're getting back to major tournaments, but when they get in there, they're kind of freezing. What would you like to see change to ensure that the next major tournament that Scotland get to, they go further than they have before?
Well, that's $1 million question.
You know the answer, you've got the job.
That's what people like me and my colleagues will be sitting down. That's our over the next few days. And but you're right. I mean, Scotland, almost feels like getting to the tournaments and it's job done. We almost expend so much energy, so much emotional energy just getting to these tournaments, and we get there and we've just yet again we've it's probably a bit extreme to say we stunk the place out. We did in Germany. Maybe not hard to say that here. It's been as Steve Clarke said, typical Scotland to get one game against the lowest ranked nation in the tournament, and then the next 2 games against the 2 nations ranked in the top 6. So I think looking back, I know we were all quite happy with the draw when it was made in Washington back in December, but in the final analysis, it was a hard draw, and so in terms of what happens next, it's quite a thought, isn't it? Thinking bring on Slovenia, Nations League. I don't think anyone's got the stomach for that right at this moment, but that is the next game, isn't it? in the autumn. Time will tell, where Steve Clarke's head will be at. We haven't discussed it yet, but we've just signed a 4-year contract. That's been discussed quite a lot, hasn't it, in the last few days? Was it the right thing to give Steve Clarke that contract just on the eve of the World Cup? Possibly the way it's panned out, maybe not. But I'm one of the people who look around and think, who else is there manager-wise? I think I'm still, I think Steve Clarke has done a good job. He'll learn again from the last 3 matches. He did say that before the tournament that he wanted to enjoy this tournament, having not enjoyed Germany 2 years ago. I'm not sure he's given those vibes off, whether of him enjoying it. Certainly not in those post-match interviews. But yeah, I'm sure he'll go away and reflect again, and possibly, I don't know if we'll get the chance to speak to him in the next couple of days. We'll see what happens in the Scotland camp. As I say, it's a difficult day today, difficult scenario today. The players just waiting around, doing a bit of training potentially, and then I guess they'll watch the games tonight, and when it's done and dusted, they'll get that charter flight home again. But it's I have to say at this point, looking out on Charlotte, the sort of Charlotte stretched out ahead of me, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, the thought of going to getting up for Scotland v Slovenia in a few months' time, it's a tough one, because as we've seen in Boston, as we saw in Miami, there's just so much joy, there was so much anticipation around this World Cup, and the way it's ended, it's just been such a, it's been typical Scotland, but it's been. We've been brought down with an absolute bump, haven't we?
Look, all hope is not lost. I think I need to go through these remaining scenarios that we've got left to face. There's 6 groups left. Yeah, 6 groups left to play, and Scotland need 4 of these third place teams to have a worse record than them. So going through them, the remaining games. Group I, we leave Senegal and Iraq. We need them to draw or Iraq to beat Senegal by no more than 2 goals. In Group H, we need Uruguay to lose to Spain. In Group G, we need Iran to lose to Egypt. In Group L, we need Croatia to also lose to Ghana by at least 3 goals. And in Group K, we need DR Congo and Uzbekistan to either draw or Uzbekistan to win by no more than 3 goals. And in Group J, Austria and Algeria are already on 3 points. So we need Algeria to lose by 2 or more goals, or Austria to be beaten by at least 4. So gents, there's still faint optimism there, faint hope. It's never over until it's over, but that's what we need to happen.
I feel like I've just given you a little therapy session, and suddenly your hopes come back here. But I'll be honest, Lewis, I'm not feeling it at the moment. But who knows? Nothing's over till it's over. Hope is a prison and all that kind of stuff. But Alan, Lewis, it has been therapeutic. It really has, and sometimes these are the best episodes to do because it gets stuff off your chest. But thanks very much to the listeners for coming on, because I know it can be difficult to listen to a post-mortem, essentially, which is how it feels sometimes. But thanks for joining us. Hopefully we're back soon, and this is all egg on my particular face. And please please share, please subscribe if you feel like you so wish to do. And then please do join us, where hopefully the 4% chance becomes the 100% chance in Scotland play. I think it will beat Mexico in the last 32. But Alan, Lewis, thanks very much.